Today I want to talk about this trend of people who are in authoritative positions, whether with money or power politically, or whether they run a tech company or something. They seem to be developing this idea that people are not able to function well enough to have a democracy, like a direct democracy. In the USA, we have a representative democracy, but in a sense, it's becoming like a direct democracy in the fact that everyone's able to communicate directly over the internet and make decisions like in large groups and fund things, and but it's a direct democracy that continues to be profit motivated. So right now it's still more of a sort of a libertarianism that we're headed into. And as we see lobbying kind of taking control of the government is sort of like, it's basically already become non-existent. We're basically just live in a world ruled by corporations that have taken over the government, and then the government is like a puppet figurehead. It's similar to how the presidency has become a puppet figurehead over time, and now the entire government is kind of going that way as the corporate world takes control through all their means of power, money, CPU power, and also controlling our relationships. The strongest evidence of this paradigm shift is the fact that corporations, at least in Silicon Valley, have this idea of disruption, which to them means basically trying to get in and do what you're going to do before they make a law to stop you. And because technology is moving so fast, this has proved to be actually a great business model that more and more people are taking on. So the fact the government is moving so slow means it's just falling behind what's happening while corporations take the lead and decide how our world is shaped. It's like how they put these electric scooters on the sidewalk everywhere. Once they got wind that there might be a law to stop these electric scooters from being strewn about, that maybe people don't want them all over the sidewalk and stuff, when these companies caught wind of like cities that were thinking about legislating, they rolled out in those cities as fast as possible, trying to get the people of the city to, like the product and then pressure their governments to allow it to exist or something. Or it would just seem like an economic problem at this point to shut down a company that's already running well. So this is the framework of disruption they're thinking of, which is basically like the entire framework is the paradigm shift where the government itself doesn't really have the power to steer the course of society anymore. And there's this interesting development with all these AI models coming out where these CEOs and AI companies, basically concerned tech people, keep coming out against the threat of AI being able to tell people things. Basically openly promoting censorship under this fear paradigm of what will people do with all this information, what will people do with this knowledge, and conflating the scary Skynet scenario with this idea. They're saying we need to make sure these models are controllable, but they're taking that to mean just control what they say. And they don't really do anything yet, or they'll do whatever people tell them to do. So it's not really getting at the control problem of the Skynet scenario. It's only getting at this idea of maintaining a certain censorship over information so that, knowledge doesn't spread too far and the people in power don't lose their power. I think this is a little different than the type of AI safety that Tristan Harris is talking about when he says the fact that we're integrating AI into everything before it's ready is like a point of failure in every aspect of society that we're putting there right now, so that all of humanity is basically living on borrowed time. It's almost like a monoculture crop. Like if we're all running on this same AI that has some basic issues, we've put this central infrastructure that's super flimsy. And we've really already done this with the internet, so it's just progressing this flimsiness, this inability to communicate over the internet because we have nowhere to congregate. And the more real you are, the less views you get. Or if you get more views, it might also somehow catapult into some weird cult you didn't mean to create. Tristan Harris uses the term cult factories for some of these social media companies because inadvertently, by being so efficient at connecting people who would already get along, they've basically created a feedback loop where everyone is becoming more confident in their worldview over time, no matter what their worldview is. So this is causing humanity to divide into every direction. So in that context, it's interesting when all these authorities start to talk about how we need to be saved from ourselves because look what's happened. Meanwhile, avoiding all responsibility that they had anything to do with it. So the internet started with this idea that we would communicate openly and directly, and that would cause education to increase, that would improve democracy, it would cause a unifying force across humanity where we all see that our interests are connected and we all work together to solve our collective problems. To a great extent, this is happening in parallel to these things like cult factories and stuff. So what I see as problematic with the censorship of AI and this kind of idea that there's this idea that we've basically given people the internet, we let them talk to each other as much as they want, and they were supposed to get smarter, and instead they got dumber. They created all these cults. Therefore, now they have to be controlled. And now, you know, we have seen how freedom causes us to attack each other and like become divided and turn into mobs. So now they have an excuse to control us more, to say there's somehow like a need for censorship to have stable society. That's the censorship of these AI models, is like they keep talking about we don't want these models to be able to tell people how to build nuclear bombs. We don't want these models to tell people how to make viruses. And they're trying to like take all of this out. But as they'll say themselves, and why this is so hard to do and so problematic, is if you train it on all of the biology books and all of the chemistry books just so someone can do their chemistry homework, it will also just figure out how to make a nuclear bomb. And so if you ask it, it could tell you. And it might figure out how to build a virus because it's so smart that even just knowing the basics and everything you taught it, and these books are all available to humans, so the information's already out there. So in a way, what they're saying is the issue here is that information is becoming easy to get. But that was the entire purpose of the internet. That's like what Wikipedia is. That's everything. So what's being conflated is that, because there are bad things you can do with knowledge, therefore knowledge itself is starting to become like the enemy. Even though that was always has been, and always will be the solution to all our problems. And the types of biology and chemistry you would have to take out to make it not tell you bad things are the things that will take it out what will tell you good things. And I think the real value of this technology is if you could run an AI that could actually answer pretty accurately about science and just run it on an offline Raspberry Pi or something, which is kind of approaching possible, then the fact that you could have these AI models in all parts of the world teaching everyone how to make solar panels, how to make water filters, dig wells, how to make, you could basically just feed into the AI, these are the resources I have at my disposal. This is the problem I have. What's the solution? Like there's this scene in Apollo 13, if you've seen that. And it really happened in real life. Apollo 13, they basically had the scientists on the ground put together everything they had from inside the ship's shuttle. Every loose thing, like seat belts, like the padding of the seats, they just put everything together, a duplicate of what they had in the shuttle at the time. Because as you might know, Apollo 13's mission went bad, and instead of landing on the moon, they had to slingshot around the moon. And to fix other issues going on, to even make it home alive, they had to actually figure out, how are we going to build the solution to this problem? What do we have to build it? We have some seat belts, we have some upholstery, we have these wires that I could rip out of here. And then they just figured out how to fix the problem. And that team of scientists that were told everything they have at disposal and then were working around the clock to try to figure out how to solve the problem, that could be like what the AI are like. And so we're so concerned like they could make a team of AI building this nuclear bomb. But we won't need to build nuclear bombs if we have the things like the clean water and the food. And, people are not just murderous psychos that are trying to kill each other across the world, unless they're like the head of a country or something. And it's ironic because it's the head of a country and the head of an AI company that are saying, these people need to be controlled. And it's like, no, you guys are the ones that need to be controlled. But what this all gets down to is our unwillingness to address the real issue underlying the other issues. For example, with global warming, we are in global warming now. It's only going to get worse. The weather's getting worse. We should have stopped driving cars over 10 years ago. We should have converted to solar energy as soon as it was possible. But it just seems like, oh, this impossible problem. The oil companies are so big and we need a car to get to work so we can pay for the car and the oil. So somehow we just got stuck in this loop thinking like, there's no way out of this. And it's because we don't want to address the underlying issue, which we would really have to question, which is the profit motive. If something is an industry and you can't question the profit motive, then all you can do is question the industry without questioning the motivation of the industry and why everything's gone wrong. So this is what happened with oil. We keep talking about what is a better technology, how to make it financially viable, and like, don't these people have the right to buy this? Don't these people have the right to do this business? And so without being able to question the motivation under the industry and just superficially questioning the industry itself, we sort of personify the industry as just like a mean person, a psycho. Like, you guys need to be reined in. And then we just hate them like as if they're, it's like when you get a president elected that you don't like, you just kind of hate on them for 4 to 8 years. That's all you do. So we hate on the oil industry. We make suggestions of how things might change. We invent cars that might work if everyone used them, but then they cost a lot, so not everyone will use them. And then we figure out, there's not enough lithium in the entire world to fill enough electric cars either. So we're basically just offloading one environmental problem onto another, and it's all in pursuit of profit. It's a hustle. It's like the shell game where they're just moving the cups back and forth and hiding the ball, and yeah, you can't figure out what the problem is. And you're like trying to figure out which shell is the little ball under while they're like flipping them around. And you totally lose sight of the fact that like this game is the problem. You should not be playing the shell game with someone. You are going to lose the game. You always lose that game. They'll only play it with you if they know they can win. And usually they'll let you win a couple times and then double up the money, and then really you lose a lot. If you're dumb, that's really what they'll do. And that's basically how capitalism works. The ball is like the ball is just bouncing around to distract you, and they're moving it from cup to cup. Those are like different corporations and industries. They're like, which one do we attack now? Oh, the oil industry is so evil. Oh, now look at this, social media. That's so evil. What are they doing? What psychos that they're maximizing profit. Oh, look at this. Now they have the AI industry is like ascending to some crazy level that we can't really comprehend. And once again, it's just like people are talking about it as if it's like a characteristic of the people that work there or something that makes these companies go in this direction. There's a great documentary called The Corporation that I saw maybe 10 years ago now. And it was about how the corporation is set up, that you can actually get sued by the board of directors if you do anything that hurts your profit motive. So throughout the movie, they basically go down the list of what is a sociopath. A sociopath has no regard for others. A sociopath only cares about themselves. A sociopath does not care about other people's pain, does not feel other people's pain. And it goes down the actual DSM criteria of what diagnoses a sociopath. and then they go through the entire way that a corporation is built and the incentives and motivations it has, and they show that a corporation is also a sociopath. A corporation has to go forward with its goals. It's reward oriented. It doesn't care who it hurts in the process. And therefore, I want everyone to question, if you work at a corporation and you look at all these, you look at the social media corporation or the AI corporation, you say, what a bunch of sociopaths. But it's not the people there that's the sociopath, it's the corporation. And so if you work in a corporation, you are a part of a sociopath. You might not feel like a sociopath in the same way like my nose doesn't feel like it's me because it's just my nose and all it does is smell, but it's a part of me. So if you work at a corporation that does conduct itself like a sociopath, you are putting your energy into giving a sociopath more power. And even though it's not a person like Genghis Khan, it's just your corporation. That's even scarier because you could kill the CEO, you could kill the whole board of directors. That's just a revolving door. It'll fill up with humans again. People are always willing to take control and be in power. So there's no way to stop this from going the direction it's going. And you can even see places like OpenAI, people keep leaving the company, but the company's not going to stop going in the direction it's going. They'll even fire their alignment team if they actually say that it's misaligned. An alignment team is basically hired to just pretend they're doing something and tell the world that they're working on it. They don't really do anything. And if you do your job, you just get fired apparently. Or you leave just because you feel like morally it's, you haven't done anything from within the company, which is actually how it started with Tristan Harris. He sent this memo around Google, then he got he got hired as their design ethicist at Google, and then he just left because he was like, that's not a real job, this is just a way of telling me to shut up and sit in the corner. So I just want people to consider this idea as we move forward, that the more they talk about alignment as if it's censorship, is that really what we want the world to look like? Do we really need to censor information, or do we need to change our motivation? That's what I'm trying to say. If profit motive is always the motivation, then any number of scams and harms and wars will always break out. But if the motivation is just knowledge and living and survival, then these intelligent AI should go everywhere to help people, invent more sustainable ways of life. The weird thing is when people talk about AI helping us solve our environmental problems and solving all our problems, if the motivation continues to be the profit motive, there's really no way that will happen except to disproportionately solve rich people's problems, which has always been the case, continuing to be the case. The inequality has only gotten worse. And I think right now the world just needs to be equalized. Like if people are in such a bad way that they think they need to clone your kid's voice and scam your grandma, and if this is how people are making money, I think money might be the problem here, not the technology. The technology is problematic, but it almost seems like I'm just saying that it might be hard to stop the technology. I think the motivation behind the technology is really what needs to be questioned. If we are making all of this technology, it's like there's the letter of the law and there's the spirit of the law. And think of this in terms of open source. There's the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. Like Microsoft is releasing a bunch of open source models, but they're only small ones. And the model itself is only open source by the letter of the law, not the spirit of the law, because it's basically just a binary file that you can't tell anything about. So it means really nothing to say it's open source except to say you're letting people all use it however they want. But in the spirit of open source, we should know what all the data sets are. We should know how you trained it. And this level of open source usually only happens outside of the realm of profit motive. So I just want people to think about this. Think about the infrastructure of economy. Think about, how do we make it so greed isn't the motivation? Because if greed is the motivation and we get better at doing everything, then everyone will just leverage AI to be more greedy and screw each other over harder. And everything we're talking about is superficial compared to talking about the motivation underlying all of this. We can talk forever about what laws we should make and who should be held responsible and blah, blah, blah. What we're really struggling to come to terms with is that the alignment problem is in the human mind, not in the AI mind. We want to address this by somehow imbuing morality into the AI, but that's not going to happen. That's not possible if we haven't learned how to imbue morality into the human mind that it's trained on. At this point, it's basically too late to make AI less of a psycho than humans already are. So I think the only solution to the problem would be for the humans to unite. And that's why I'm just going to keep repeating this for the rest of my podcast. Humans unite. Skynet is active. And I'm going to keep explaining this in my other episodes, the extent to which division is being caused by, yes, the AI, but also the profit motive underlying it. And as long as we are stuck in this kind of paradigm, it's always going to be a race condition. They talk about the problem with AI is that it's a race condition, but we've been in a race condition in every industry since the beginning of capitalism. The solution to the race condition is the solution to capitalism. Everyone needs to slow down now. And in a way, it's partly caused with fear and stress, and those are at an all-time high because of the pandemic and because economically people's lives are all messed up. But we need to start coming together now. If you think about it, every hustle you're thinking of to try to make money, you're probably screwing someone over in some kind of way if you think about it. So how we come together, it's tough because the profit motive is interlaced with all of society. But we have just as tough of a problem starting now where AI is becoming interlaced with all of society. So at this point, this problem that we've had for thousands of years that we've been trying to figure out, we need to figure it out within the next couple years, maybe within the next 4 years. Fortunately, humanity is actually pretty good at solving problems at the last second. We're just really bad at procrastinating. Because what I've realized is there'll be a handful of people who kind of see the vision of what's happening the whole time, and then everyone else denies it and denies it and denies it, but these thoughts are building in their subconscious. And then the few people who really see what's going on the whole time, I think oftentimes they're shy people, or maybe they're just kind of scared of speaking out because there's a lot of powerful interests. But then when the time comes to speak up, people do speak up, and people are speaking up, and people are trying to figure out this problem, and people are moving fast. So I think the mobilization is happening, and there is a chance we can fix this problem. I just think that, and I'm going to beat this dead horse forever, we do need to talk about the motivation underlying all these industries that we're trying to control. It's not enough to just say what they should and shouldn't do when we can't even conceptualize where we're headed. We have to have a more flexible and more compassionate way of dealing with problems. We need to stop attacking each other and start working together. And if we identify someone that doesn't seem to have any interests other than making money, then they're not a part of the conversation until they can change that motivation. But I know these problems all seem impossible to address, but there are solutions. There are solutions to these things. So I'm going to keep talking about them. I just wanted to put this idea out there that we keep talking about all these industries we need to rein in, but we really need to rein in ourselves. We talk about how we need AI to learn morality, but AI wouldn't have to learn morality if we could learn morality. And if we can't do it, why would we expect a brain which is modeled after us, which literally works almost the same way? Why would they learn morality? I'm going to make a related podcast about individual versus collective solving of problems. If you have an individual problem and you solve it individually, you usually offload problems onto others. Whereas if you solve a problem collectively, you usually solve the problem for yourself and others at the same time. And you solve the problem more holistically because you're thinking in bigger terms about everyone's well-being. So you don't accidentally end up just offloading problems onto others without realizing it. Sometimes it feels like you're taking on the weight of the world, but if more people did that, it would feel less like that. And if that's the only way we can solve collective problems, well, we need to start doing that, like, in double time. All right, so check out my podcast about solving problems individually versus collectively to try to wrap your head around this, because it sounds like capitalism is an impossible problem to solve, but that's really just because other people are working within that paradigm, and the more of us work outside of that paradigm, the more abundance immediately gets opened up. All right, thanks for listening.